Hello everybody, welcome to episode 46 of the Resurrected Winners Read podcast. My name is David, and as ever, I am sitting... Well, if I was in Cameroon, I'd be sitting 16.67 centimetres across from Mr. Alex Aldridge. If I was in Angola, I would be sitting 15.73 centimetres away from Alex Aldridge. And if I was in Italy, I would be sitting 15.35 centimetres away from Mr. Alex Aldridge. How are you doing today, Alex?
Where? I'm a vampire, Alex.
You're a vampire.
I have risen from my coffin to feast on the sustenance of video games about knobs instead of blood. Because it's Halloween, everybody. It's Spooktoberfest.
I was actually having a little chuckle to myself the other day that our Spooktoberfest games, at least thus far, have, well, at least in my opinion, included absolutely zero horror.
Well, all of them.
Well, there's been a bit.
What was the second one we did?
Luigi's Mansion had. I mean, I guess it's like kids spook, and then we've done this one, which is Scorn, which is like, I don't know, like if I'm being generous, it's body horror. It's not a horror game.
Yeah. And what did we do last year? We did
Alien,
Parasite Eve.
and Parasite Eve.
Oh, that one was shit scary. Alien was scary.
Alien was utterly terrifying.
Yeah. But Parasite Eve wasn't. At all.
But my favourite of the four is hands down Parasite Eve. Absolutely love that game now. I've got such a soft spot for that game.
Me too. And then followed by Luigi's Mansion.
Just want to give it a big hug in Luigi's Mansion. I enjoy that too.
Yeah.
Alex,
yeah, Parasite Eve is special. Special gravy.
I was gonna allude to it, but I'm just gonna charge this head on, Alex. I was looking at, in preparation, which obviously most people probably figured out by now, the average penis size by country. Ecuador.
That's why you were talking about centimetres.
Yes.
That confused the shit out of me.
Ecuador has an average erect length of 17.61 centimetres, which is a 10.54% of the average height of each person in Ecuador. So, on average, a man in Ecuador's penis is 10% of their height, which gave me the chuckles. That is insanely large.
Yeah, that has to be massive. Yeah. How do we do centimetre? What's 10.5 centimetres? In inches.
17.61 centimetres. In inches. Let's have a look.
Sorry, 17 points. Fuck, that seems low. That seems massive.
Yeah. So 17.61 centimetres is 6.9 inches. That can't be right. That
still bigger than me, but slightly disappointing.
It's bigger than
the women of Ecuador.
At 10% of your height is not 6.9 inches. I'm not having that.
They might be very small. The short lads with the average wangs.
Yeah, to be fair, they are actually. I'm looking at and in the top page, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. In the top 21, which I can see, they are the shortest in terms of height.
There's your answer. So any myths about a man's height and his genital size are incorrect.
Incorrect. Yeah. If you're looking for some big
it's all relative anyway.
If you're looking for some big old slinging dick in Europe, the biggest penis size you'll get is in the Netherlands, of 15.87 centimeters.
I would say what basically we're teaching to our listeners at this stage is that if you have a small knob, you need to make sure that you hunch yourself as much as you can. Grab yourself the worst posture you could possibly imagine so that you gradually end up shrinking.
Yes.
Then what you can say to any prospective sexual partner that you are trying to penetrate, when they talk about disparaging remarks about the size of your Johnson, you can merely say, but, however, it's all relative, and if you think of it as a percentage of my height, it's actually fucking massive.
Yeah.
So, short dick guys, try and somehow make yourself shorter height-wise, and then you can throw some percentages out there. Play the percentages, as they say. And your knob size won't matter. Size doesn't matter if you're also short.
Yeah.
So don't be average height and have a small knob like me, basically. the moral of that story.
If you're wanting to go to land of the small dicks, the smallest dick on this list is Cambodia. Only slightly beaten out by a joint second last place of Burma and the Philippines. So that's where you go.
That's an area. That's all one big area, right? So all those lads over there in the I don't know what part of that. I mean, it's
Asia.
Yeah, East Asia, Southeast Asia.
My favourite insult I was ever given was when I was walking to school one day and there was a bunch of bigger boys. I must have been like first or second year, and there was a bunch of 6 years. So I'm trying to think of that in English terms. So that goes from, when I was in first year of secondary school, I would have been 12 years old.
Yeah, so you're year 7.
Yeah, and 6 years would have been their final year of secondary school. So they were walking behind me and they just started shouting abuse at me for reasons unknown to me. And then one of them just shouted at me, "If it wasn't for millimeters, you'd be a woman." And that stuck with me for my entire life. It just makes me chuckle whenever I hear about it. It was so good. Such a beautiful insult.
It is absolutely incredible for somebody of such a young age.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember even at the time I found it quite
Saved
funny.
by a measurement.
Yeah, saved by a measurement.
If it wasn't for millimeters, you'd be a woman. That's amazing.
You could save that and shout that at someone.
I think I will. I'll use it at work tomorrow.
Just watch you don't get a biscuit tin over your head.
Coffee tin.
It was called coffee tin. You're never. I was going to say you're never living that down. Like you were the man going out dishing out coffee.
Well, I mean, I did benefit from the tainted coffee stained with a man's career. He still made me a fucking coffee. That's the maddest part about it.
Just went back to it.
He's weaponized coffee and then unweaponized it and made it back into a drink for me. What's the opposite of weaponizing? Domesticated?
Yeah,
I've re-domesticated the coffee on Michael's head. Here's your cuppa. What a fucking knobhead. Apparently that guy had like a bit of a rich dad. So he just kind of landed on his feet, I think. Didn't have to worry about money as much as the rest of us.
Did the coffee tin make a noise? Because like, it's a shame.
I didn't see it.
It's a shame it wasn't like a biscuit tin, because that would make like such a boing noise. It made like a...
Well, that's almost sounded like you know those things you get for a doorstop sometimes, and you ping it back. It's like coiled door stops.
The absolute fucking catnip to a dog.
And children, like 6 or 7 year olds.
Well.
I used to love that shit when I was a young'un. There's that, and when you get a ruler and you like flick the ruler and then pull it along the table. I
remember that.
So it goes... Bleh. Maybe not quite like that, but I don't have one to hand. I'll try and find a sound clip and play it now.
Such a musician,
like
Alex.
That. Yeah.
Even when you're sitting in school playing with rulers.
Musically playing though. Yeah.
I
mean, I was also using them to measure my dick, so I could then, have it relative to my overall height.
Yeah. To
try and average everything out.
I had a floppy ruler when I was at school.
So that's only for when you were measuring a flaccid dick.
Yeah.
Which your measurements weren't talking about. They were only erect ones, weren't they?
Yeah, I actually... Well...
That's amazing, isn't it? How are you doing? How are you pulling off them measurements? Right, everybody get a boner. I'll wait.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen in like...
Come on, Spain, hurry up.
I knew these things existed. It was like... Because periodically you'll open a tabloid newspaper and it'll be like, the UK is ranked 15th in the world for penis size. And then... But then in the same article, it's like, yeah, most men lie about their penis size. So,
I mean, what the fuck? What's the point of that? Are the women then going to go, I better fucking move to Ecuador then, because I'm not going for a man whose dick size is only single digits of his overall height. Fuck that 8% of your height. Get out of here.
Get out of here.
I mean, who cares? What's a woman going to do? Oh, these men's dicks in Britain are way too small. I want to make sure that the fucking back of my womb is getting tickled, and until then, I'm going to move to Somalia or somewhere. I don't know. What's that? What? Give me the top 5.
Ecuador.
Top 5 wangs.
I've closed it now. Ecuador was the winner.
Well, I think everybody out there listening should be very pleased that David offered to perform research and notes for this podcast and ended up looking at knobs.
Yeah, I've linked
That's dedication.
My Chrome account is linked to my work laptop now, so I've now tainted my. I'll be on a list somewhere.
Fucking amazing. Oh my god. What's your favourite word for a willy?
Willie's up there.
Yeah, it's pretty. I always find it quite funny when Americans say willy. It just doesn't sound right.
Yeah. And there's something quite satisfying about the word dick. So Willie and Dick probably would be my. They're also names as well, which I'm quite a fan of.
Yeah, hang on. Right.
Willie, Dick, Schlong, Penis,
Schlong.
Cock I'm not into.
Let's have a look at synonyms of penis in the College English Dictionary.
Johnson. You just got to have watched Austin Powers and you'll have some to hand at any moment.
Right, so we've got phallus.
Nah.
Dick.
Dick's,
obviously.
Dick's good.
Prick.
That's a prick's quite a fun one.
Member. Tool.
Nah.
Organ. Cock.
Nah.
Wang. Knob. Chopper.
That's quite a good one, yeah.
Yeah. I sometimes, this doesn't say here, but sometimes people say, like, get your lad out. No, that, you know, your lad. What else we got? Plonker. Didn't know that was
I didn't know that was slang for a dick either.
You know what a Burke is slang for, right?
No, absolutely no idea.
Cunt.
Get your Burke out for the lads.
It's Cockney rhyming slang. Is Berkshire Hunt. That's what it's short for. Burke is short for Berkshire Hunt, which is Cockney rhyming slang.
Ah.
Or Hunt. What else we got? Dong.
My girlfriend's mum's from Berkshire, and then she was.
I thought you were going to get she's called Dong.
She was really disappointed that her own. I mean, I couldn't do it either. I don't think, but she was absolutely disgusted that her daughter couldn't point to Berkshire on a map.
Did she point to fucking? I nearly said Pataudry. Then that's not where you live.
Well, she probably could because she's lived up here most of her life. But yeah, it's like.
Oh fuck!
I couldn't do it.
I thought her mum still lived down here. Maybe I'm getting confused. Didn't somebody? Is it her aunt that's got a place down here? Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, her aunt lives down your neck of the woods.
Right. Anyway, Winkle.
Winkle, yeah.
I like how we're like talking about your family, and I'm like, anyway, back to the knobs.
Winkle pickers is a shoe type, is it not?
Winkle picker, yeah, it is. Rather than a molesting device. Joystick.
Maybe it's a paedophile shoe. I don't know.
Yeah. Pecker.
Joystick.
That's definitely not English slang.
Pecker can get fucked.
John Thomas.
John Thomas, yeah, that's a good Austin Powers classic.
Weenie.
Wiener.
Tadger. Schlong. And then you've got Pizzle, which is apparently archaic.
Oh, is it?
And Tockley, which is Australian slang.
Tockley.
So, hello to all the Aussie Tockleys out there. And there we go.
We've made it.
Good old John
made it to
Thomas.
the end of the podcast.
My favourite thing I've ever heard for a vagina is ham wallet.
Oh, that's... Yeah, okay. Kebab is the other one that sort of kicks loose the same sort of disgusted feelings in my brain as ham wallet did.
What, kebab for a vagina?
Yeah.
Well, obviously there's like a grilled cheese sandwich for an old lady's one.
Oh my good God.
And then what was the other one I was going to say? Oh, one of my mates used to call it a burger. Can I see your burger?
I bet that worked. Loads.
And do you remember when on old Bo Selector where the guy used to do Lorraine Kelly and she always used to like, yeah, have you seen my griller? That was always funny. This is what fucking Scorn has done. Scorn has caused this. They've got nobody to blame but themselves.
Yes.
Keep your John Thompson. What is it? John Thomas? Whatever it is, to yourselves, lads. I mean, I've seen people say that they basically think that because of all the phallic imagery in this.
Yeah.
And did you notice as well towards the end of the game? There's like statues of a man like boning a woman while he's holding her up.
Yeah, there's a lot of head going on in that because I actually thought I think this is in contrast to you. I thought there was like quite little dick in this until I got to the last area of the game, and I was like, "Oh no, here it comes." Certainly in terms of overt penis, there was a lot of sort of phallic-looking instruments, I think would be the best way to describe it. But there's like when you get to the last area, it just becomes overt, and then when you get that sort of milking device stuck on you, then it's just not even messing about, is it? It's just going straight for the dick.
Because the theory that I saw was like, the game's all to do with like birth, rebirth, pregnancy, sex, etc. And at the end of the game, when you're getting carried by that pregnant thing, that the area that you're getting carried to is shaped like a vagina. It's like a big V with a light coming out, and that they're saying that like it's the metaphor at the end is for like basically being stillborn because you get killed by the parasite.
Oh fuck! On the way out, that makes sense, right? Okay, because I was like. Look, I think you and I were looking at this before, but we were looking at something of H.R. Geiger's work. And I'm like, I feel like this is going for something that is just going beyond me. So I was having a little Google about it. So like, there's a bit I managed to find that says, and this is I think I've pulled this from Wikipedia, so the most eloquent of sources. Geiger's most distinctive stylistic innovation was that of representation of human bodies and machines in cold, interconnected relationships, which he describes as biomechanical, His main influences were painters Dado, Ernest Fuchs, and Salvador Dali. I really like Salvador Dali.
Oh, I think Salvador Dali is an underrated madman from history.
Phenomenal, I think.
He's insane.
He was introduced to Dali.
Did you get made to watch that Dali film in uni with me? Were you in that?
Unfortunately.
Oh, no, yeah. Maybe it was a Jack Keenan thing. Did you not have Jack Keenan?
Yes, briefly, yeah, I did have Jack.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he made it. I swear it was him. It was either him or Tim. Made us watch one of Dali's films, and someone where like that woman gets like ants and spiders crawling out of her hand, and he cuts a pig's eye with a razor and all that shit.
I wish I'd seen
Fucking
that.
Nuts, man. I think it's called an Andalusian dog or un chien andalou. Mental.
So he was introduced to Dali by a painter called Robert Venosa. Geiger was also influenced by Polish sculptor.
Geiger met Dali? Of course, because Dali was making films, so their lives would have been intersected.
Polish sculptor Stanislaw Sukanski, I think it is, and painters Austin Osman Speer and Matti Klarvine. And his personal friend Timothy Leary. He studied interior and industrial design at a school of commercial art in Zurich from 1962 to 1965.
Imagine if Geiger did your interior design.
Man.
He clearly did for this fucking place in Scorn, didn't he?
Apparently he made his first paintings as art therapy. I find it quite... And maybe it's supposed to be, but like looking at H.R. Geiger work, a lot of it is quite... I mean, like, we're going to come to it. So, like, obviously, like, mention it is alien as fuck. But the movies, but like in terms of looking at it, I find a lot of it quite uncomfortable to look at. Is that fair? Is that deliberate?
Mm-hmm. I would have thought so.
Because I don't know
what the deeper meaning is. I don't know. Or why.
Well, this is the thing that I struggle with. I find myself quite endlessly fascinated by it, and I enjoy looking at it. But then I was thinking, would you put this on your wall? And I was like, no, absolutely not. But I'm quite intrigued by it. Like there are bits we was the H.R. Geiger stuff we looked at after the Luigi Mansion pod, and there were some nice stuff. Okay, there's stuff out there I would put on my wall. There's a lot.
He wasn't as bad as that Polish guy that they're also influenced by that we couldn't say his name.
There's a lot of war stuff that I think at least it felt war-like to me. You know, like with the people in the corner, or there was people in that looked like late Nazi helmets that were all like crushed in and stuff like that. Almost like sort of hive minds. That stuff's quite compelling. But yeah, like when I was googling H.R. Geiger stuff after I finished the game at the weekend, it's a lot of alien-looking aliens. Alien the movie looking aliens with just like mechanical dicks up its ass, and I just couldn't figure out, like I'm obviously missing something here, and I find art like I'm trying to think, like, what do you mean, how do you describe like painting art, like what do you call it, how would you describe that, like picture art, because like obviously video games are art, movies are art, like how would you describe that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
like basically paintings and stuff. Like
that'll do. I can't think of what that is. What the category of that would be, other than paintings.
I find it fascinating, but I don't have the tools to understand what a lot of it is.
I don't know how you come up with stuff like Geiger did whilst being in a place of lightness and calm and happiness.
It's so contrasting, yeah.
Where does that mindset come from, and how do people just think of things like that?
And maybe this is...
You'd never be able to understand how that kind of a mind works.
Maybe this is part
to bring up those images that seemingly someone invented that, because biomechanical is not a thing.
No,
never has been a thing, and obviously even in Scorn they're very heavily influenced by what somebody else has done. But where's he coming up with this shit?
So I'm fully aware that I, as someone that doesn't have the tools to discuss these things properly, am probably pulling things out my ass.
Yeah, me too.
Like, what sort of the two things that popped into my head when you were saying that was, I guess, like, what's shocking about them is, on one hand, that like when we think of machines, especially in the way that they're depicted, they are quite clean, crisp, mechanical things, and to sort of sexualize them, I don't know, does it dirty them in some way? I don't know. It sort of puts them in a situation, I guess, that is really contrasts with how you would imagine them. And then on top of that, I guess the ultimate is sort of like people in think tanks imagine the ultimate end of the human race is that we almost become gods, and what that is that we create sentient, intelligent life through machines that will then live on beyond the human race and don't have to worry about things like oxygen, so then they can go off into space and explore and become a species in their own right, and then we sort of act as God. I don't know, are those paintings going for things, but am I way off the deep end here in looking at these things and seeing that sort of imagery and taking that from it while you're saying that, or have I just gone completely wild?
It's one thing that has just sort of popped into my head for some reason is like, do you remember the South? This is going to be such a weird thing to go on to now.
This is a weird.
Remember the South Park episode
this
where
is the weirdest
Butters
podcast we've ever done. But let's go.
Yeah. Remember the South Park episode where Butters becomes a writer and he writes those books that are absolutely disgusting?
Books, yeah.
So where I'm going with that is like, is there sometimes just an element where somebody just wants to think of the most horrendous thing possible,
and they want to shock for shock value's
conceptualize sake. That, yeah, into something like tangible that you can see? Because what is it? What is it? What's the phrase where they say, like, oh, people say that violent films make men violent, but it's men's violence that inspire violent films.
It's the same like guns don't kill people rappers do type of thing.
Yeah.
The guns don't kill people, so, people kill people, obviously.
So I do wonder if there's like some element where they're just like, there is no meaning to this. I just thought, what's the most fucked up thing I can come up with in my head? Or are they tormented by nightmares? How have these things manifest, and do they have a deeper meaning? Like, I
mean, surely shock being to evoke shock in itself, I guess, is art, isn't it? Because I guess art by definition exists to evoke. So if it's evoking shock or evoking revulsion or evoking some sort of animalistic, like primal emotion, that is its purpose. If I guess that's what they're shooting for.
That's very true, because you can look back at like a lot of like Middle Ages paintings or a little bit after that, and then some of them are horrifically violent.
Yeah.
And things like, Japanese paintings of like
really?
Hirotsuka Doji, like old tentacle porn shit. Like, women clearly were not going around fucking octopuses back then.
No.
So someone's thought that up.
Yeah.
So the mind is capable of a hell of a lot of dark shit, and how there can't always be meaning to it.
This I guess this is a slight tangent. We're talking about interest in art, and then you mentioned Japanese art. That anime horror book that you've periodically put me into contact with. What's that one called, with the weird eyes and stuff? Are you wearing a t-shirt on it? Berserk. That exists to shock, as far as I've seen.
Surely. I can't think what else. I mean, yeah. There's obviously something about the underlying narrative of it that is not built for that reason, but the way it then comes together and the way that it plays out is shocking. Same with like Game of Thrones. I mean, George R.R. Martin is clearly inspired by things like Lord of the Rings and medieval history, and he's clearly a massive fan of it, but he also must be a huge fan of the brutality of the way that humans acted in those times. And that's why those kind of things are as disgustingly violent as they are. Lord of the Rings isn't really that horrendous. It's like he looked at that and went, "Oh, I could make something like that, but with more rape."
Yeah.
But why? Where do these? Yeah,
Don't know. I don't know. And this is, I feel. I think I use. Well, I think normally I would say I feel stupid, but I don't think that's true. I just have never. I just lack the tools to be able to pull these things apart.
Yeah. And in the case of Scorn, we're talking about a video game here that has been in development, or at least been in conception, since 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So these people have held this desire to make this fucking abhorrent hellscape video game for nearly a decade at this point, now that it's come out. So they've held on, and they talk a lot about on their website, for Ebb Software, the developer. It's their first ever game. They talk about how, you know, they've never let go of their vision, and, you know, they wanted to. They've tried so hard to get this to come to be. They tried to kickstart it back in 2014, and they were asking for
that matches my research.
Yeah, they're trying to get $250,000, and they ended up getting like 4.5 and shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
I think they then later did go back and get different crowdfunding once they'd actually had it published by like IGN and shit. But yeah, they keep talking about how they had like the team grew and like-minded people joined the company. So there's obviously been a very strong desire to make something this horrible. And part of me just thinks like, I don't know how you ever create that in your mind that you want that. I mean, this is obviously inspired by things, but still.
I saw a title of an article that said, and I actually, the more I think about it, the more I kind of agree with it, especially given the direction that the Alien movies went after Alien, in that Scorn is more faithful to H.R. Geiger than the Alien movies are. I think that's probably quite inaccurate. I mean, it's an easy to say because there's one Scorn game, and this would probably be a different discussion if Alien was Alien and then it just got left like that. But as it is, it's probably quite true, because the Alien movies became their own thing.
Yeah, until we got to Prometheus, and then it kind of went back on itself.
Kind of went back on itself in a way. And is this a controversial opinion? They're very un-Alien movies, but I quite like the Prometheus movies. They're quite enjoyable.
Yeah, they're all right.
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like when they came out, there was quite a visceral dislike.
I think there was disappointment, if nothing else, in them.
Which now that I've seen all the Alien movies, I don't understand. Because most of the Alien movies aren't like Alien.
It's true. You're in a better place to discuss that than I am, because I haven't actually seen all the Alien films. I've only seen the first two and then the Prometheus ones. I've not seen 3 or Resurrection or anything else. I didn't follow the same trajectory as you did after the Alien pod, which was basically a year ago now.
Yes. Just to sort of bring us back, because you'd started on this. I'll give you a little bit of stats, and then I also went. I'm sure you might have done as well, but I went on their website and had a look at what the Scorn developers thought the game was meant to be. So this was obviously released on, well, it's 4 days ago now, the 14th of October 2022. It was published by a company called Kepler Interactive, and as Alex said, it was developed by Ebb Software. It's got a Metacritic score in PC of 71, a user score of 6.8, and a Metacritic score on Xbox on 60, and a user score of 7.2. I would sort of sit between that, I think.
I think a 6.5, maybe, something round about where I would go.
I'm not quite. I mean, to me, like 7 is good. I don't think it's a bad game, but I'm not sure I feel comfortable saying it was like I don't know. It was okay, I think is my sort of feelings.
I strongly disliked this game for the first half. You did,
because I
really strongly disliked it.
I think this is like peek behind the curtain. This is one of the few games that maybe the first actually that I finished before you.
Well, Doom 64.
Oh yeah, that
you
one.
Finished it while I was trying.
And I remember I'd finished it, and I had gone through a vaguely, not quite as visceral, but a vaguely similar path to you. And I was playing this, I was like, oh, I don't like this at all, don't like it. And then I got to a point, which I guess we'll come to, and I was like, oh, okay, I get what this is, and I get what it's shooting for. And like we said before, it was a realignment of expectations. And when I got there, I was like, okay, I'm into a groove, I understand what it's doing. I don't love it, but it's okay, and I'm having a fine time with it. I was never bored, I don't think. But anyway, yeah, we'll come to that. Sorry, I'll finish off my initial thought. Yeah. So the Scorn developers described the game as an atmospheric horror adventure game set in a nightmarish universe of odd forms and somber tapestry. It's designed around the idea of being thrown into the world, isolated and lost inside this dreamlike world. You will explore different interconnected regions in a non-linear fashion. The unsettling environment is a character in itself. And this is where, like I said, it was the Washington Post that described the game as more faithful to H.R. Geiger than Alien.
Right.
Yeah, I guess it is what the developers are shooting for. It does plop you in, like we spoke about this over text. There's no explanation about what's happening. There's no explanation anyway, even in terms of the controls, and you sort of figure them out. Is we like to have a laugh about ourselves, and that both of us got significantly into the game before discovering the game allowed us to do certain things. You finished the game.
I didn't know that you could switch weapons with a D-pad until you told me afterwards. And it's not because I don't trust you, but I still don't quite believe that. But I don't. Yeah. I'm not prepared to go back in and test it.
So up on the D-pad is that weird sort of cattle punch thing.
Yeah.
Down is the grenade launcher, and then right and left is the shotgun and the weird rifle thing.
Unbelievable. If I'd have known that I'd have come away from it feeling so much better.
It's still slow though. I mean, it's a lot faster than what you fucking battled with, but it's still slow.
Yeah, because as I said to you, it was more the fact that I was pressing Y and then cycling through the weapons and then pressing Y, but probably pressing it more than once because I was panicking, and then it's still registering the inputs. Right. And he would select the gun and then go back to the gun selection and then select the gun and go back, and I'm just getting stomped by a fucking charger or whatever.
That makes your text make sense, because I'm not sure I understood what you meant at that.
I've been meaning to want to talk to you in person about it, because I thought, I bet this is nonsense that I'm texting out right now. But you press Y, he brings up his gun and his little spider thing, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And then you can go left and right through it. And then when I pressed Y, if you press Y again,
I never did that.
Because I didn't. There may have been another button to press to then select that weapon, but A was not the button, and I was.
So that's interesting. So what happens when you hold Y?
If you press Y, he then holds up. He will open the top of the gun, and you can see how many bullets are lodged in the gun.
Wow.
He'll hold up his little spider hand, and it'll show how much reserve ammo you've got, how much health you've got.
Okay.
You can cycle through the weapons that way. So I was doing that to pick the weapon, and you press Y again when you know what you've got, and he'll put the weapon back down. But if you press Y more than once, it will then sort of bring the gun back down, and then register the Y button you've pressed again, and then just go straight back to it. So I kept going back to the weapon select thing by accident and getting dicked.
So this gives me a whole new perspective on the game, because one thing I've got in my notes is the thing I found really, really fascinating was that how little HUD the game had, and I was trying to think of interesting ways that they could get rid of the HUD, because the HUD basically consists of, when you take damage, you can see your health and you can see how many bullets you've got in your chamber. If you look down, because he's infected by that parasite, he's got 4 arms, so you can see him holding his gun, and he's holding everything he's got in all 4 hands. And so essentially, if you look down, you get your whole HUD that comes up. And I was like, that would be cool if they found a way to incorporate your health as well as your bullets and things like that.
Yeah,
I find it really interesting that essentially they had their menu/HUD within the game, and I thought that was really well done. I didn't know that if you press Y that it brought it all up.
He would just hold it up in front of his face and look at it.
Okay, because I was doing the same. Because did you notice towards the end of the game, after you get the parasite off you, when you look down at the floor, your guts are basically hanging out, and he's holding his insides in with one of his hands while you're walking about your other hand.
Yeah. Another theory I saw actually seemed to think that nobody really knows what the symbolism in this game is. So obviously there's a lot of speculation going on. But one of the theories I saw seems to think that parasite is supposed to be symbolism for like an abusive partner, because that's on you the whole time. When you get that parasite off you towards the end, you literally have to pull it off your own back.
Yeah.
And people are saying, like, it's constantly got its arms around you, holding you back. It occasionally hurts you and you lose your health every time it does it randomly. And it just sort of never lets go of you. And it's there till right at the end. And then obviously it stops you from your rebirth right at the end. So people have kind of related it to that.
That's
as being some sort of abusive relationship.
I guess that it sort of fits. This is it.
Because it's kind of cuddling you the whole time, isn't it? Because it's always, as you say, it's got its arms around you. Its arms are below yours. And it's kind of on your back. It's really weird.
Yeah, so I guess that's the contrast, isn't it? Like a hug that it's given you is sort of meant to be a nice thing and a caring thing.
Which I guess can be used by people manipulating others in an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Mm.
Did you see the chat that it seems like we will get to it, but did you see the sort of theory that the thing that the hugger thing is apparently the first character that you play in the game?
I have seen things to do with the fact that they are twins or involved with each other in some way, or maybe this is the end of the game is the beginning of the game over again or something. But I didn't see that specifically saying that was the other guy. But that could work.
Yeah, I remember when I texted you at some point while we were playing the game saying I had an epiphany with the game. The epiphany I had with the game was that, and it never ended up coming to pass, which is a bit of a shame. So like I'd played the first section and then the first character you play dies.
Yes.
And then you sort of spawn as the second character. And as you're walking through, there was some point in which I realised that this is the area I've been before, but a lot of time has passed. And I was like, oh my God, this is cool. This is cool. Like, this is how...
Yeah.
And I was like, is this how it's going to happen? Each character is going to get a little bit closer to the end.
I remember hearing you say that on the stream, yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is really, really cool. And then when I was playing, I think, again, I said it on the stream, that it would be interesting that, like having your character die every sort of... at the end of each act allows you to do sort of different things. So like the first area was very puzzle heavy, and then the second area starts...
There's no enemies there at all.
No, and then it starts introducing enemies. So like you could have an area that's all about combat. You could have had an area that's all about puzzle. You could add an area that's all about exploration. And I thought, oh, this is an opportunity for them to really mess with genres while they're doing the game. They never did it, but that's kind of where I thought it was going. But there's a bit where you walk out onto a platform and you see... There's the area at the start where you're wheeling about the dude and the egg on your trolley, and you can like move the train tracks about.
Yeah.
When you see that sort of tower in the middle, I walked out and saw it. I was like, oh, that's the tower I was at before, but it looks different. Clearly, a lot of time has passed since the last, and I just thought I really liked that. That really stuck with me for some reason. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting a bit carried away, but that was a real cool moment for me.
I think I was probably still in my huff at that point, where this game just kind of their ideology of we want to drop you into the world and have you kind of figure things out. I think the way that they did that, and with how sort of high of a barrier it was to actually start making progress at the beginning, sold the world design and the level design short in that. Excuse me. Every part of the interior of the beginning of the first act is, it's how they're going to set you up with, this is our art style for this game. This is our influence. This is the selling point of the game that's intrigued you and brought you to this stage where you're playing it. But it did look similar throughout. Everywhere you went looked pretty much the same. It all followed that same sort of theme to the point where I was just constantly getting lost over and over again. I could never find my way back. There's no map, obviously. That would render their ideology around how they want to deliver this game to you completely irrelevant. So I found myself walking around for an hour at least, just getting lost over and over again until I found the sliding puzzle on the wall for the egg part. And I found that everything felt slow. The walking and even the sprinting felt slow. The the way that all the mechanical things that you interact with was always unskippable, and it was always slow. So if you went over to one of the little egg things, you know, where it tries to grab the egg and pull his arm off and all that stuff, if you did that without the egg being there, it would go through the whole animation and mechanical animation over and over again, really slowly, and that was what was getting to me. It was just kind of like, I don't want to quite say boring, it was just kind of frustrating to the point where if I accidentally went to the wrong place and pressed the wrong thing, I'd have to sit there and watch it show me how I was wrong and then retrace my steps to somewhere else and get lost again. So I feel like that opening area was a big misstep in terms of selling this game. And I've seen a lot of people say like, oh, I can't wait for this game to get interesting, or this game needs to pick up soon, and how the slow starts put quite a lot of people off. Whereas in reality, I think if I went back to it now, knowing what to expect coming up, I probably would prefer it to a lot of what we get up to later.
Yeah, I guess this is a sort of opportunity. Is like how I found the map, because like I maybe didn't find the same things frustrating as you did, but I was certainly quite frustrated and not quite sure what to do in that game. And frustrated probably isn't the right word for me, but I spent a lot of the opening hour or so quite overwhelmed, and I guess like it's probably the game's biggest achievement, but in terms of from a gameplay perspective, it's why I was overwhelmed. Is like they do a fantastic job of making the map feel like it is huge and expansive, and when you're walking around, you feel like you're in this massive ship or this massive complex, but actually the areas that you walk around are quite small. And there's not much to them, which I thought was really interesting. And they do another thing is like there was an area that I spent. It's the area that you go through where you first encounter an enemy that is like puffing acid or smoke out of its little fucking beak. That whole area, you feel like you're off-piste. You don't feel like you're on a path. Like it doesn't feel like you're on a path. You feel like you're fucking worming your way through this little intricate area that you shouldn't be. Which obviously you shouldn't be because you're taking damage, but yeah, like the map design and the area design and the world design, I think is probably the best thing that this game does, because it feels like something that is bigger than it is. But at the same time,
absolutely it does.
At the same time, it feeling bigger than it is for me personally worked the wrong way in a lot of the time, because I would walk into a room and there'd be like 8 different corridors, and I'm like, well, I don't know. Where am I meant to go?
That's exactly how I felt. Like, you know the bit where you I think it must be around that area where that giant thing is there, and you're like giving it fucking cesareans all the time. There's like you walk into that first room and there's so many opposite ways to go, and I remember thinking at that point just like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where to stop it. You're not going to help me. There is no dumb thing to say out loud, but there's no joy in this game at all.
There's exhausting.
Power trip, there's no like empowerment of the player. There is nothing. As you say, it's exhausting, and that's kind of what I meant when I said like I was in a huff. I wasn't angry, I was just kind of like beaten down and dejected just by being like, oh, I don't know where to go, and I don't understand what to do with this fucking machine that just keeps playing the same anime. What am I doing wrong? And then given multiple options, I just was like, I might have to get a guide out. Most of the time, I'll be honest, I watched your Twitch stream because I got so lost. I was like, I need David. Past David needs to show me where to go because I'm so lost. If it wasn't for you having already beaten it, I would never have pushed through. Because
being beaten down,
you spurred me on.
Saying that you're being beaten down by the game is a really such a true thing, and it's an interesting thing, I think, to consider alongside the idea of a video game, because I certainly felt the same as well. You never feel powerful really in this game. And I feel like if you play something like Dark Souls, you do eventually get that way. You feel like, right, I know I've got a handle on this game now. I know the tricks it's pulling. I'm upgrading my character. I know where I'm going. You just don't get that here. You never feel that way. It's endlessly bleak and
exactly.
Obviously, it's deliberately so.
Yeah.
And I find that these sort of ideas interesting. I think I know that's my go-to word, but I think it's quite apt here, because like when you're saying like, should games be fun? Yes and no. I mean, like, whatever you're shooting, like your game should be what you're aiming for it to be. And like, obviously this sort of dull, bleak, endlessly oppressive atmosphere is entirely deliberate, and in that regard they manage. Is it a fun game?
It goes back to their influence by the type of art,
Yes.
right, that we were talking about at the beginning. Like, that art is not meant to be nice and fun and pretty.
No.
And these people aren't coming to it from that sort of a place. So that is what they want. And I guess some people want that type of an emotion to play through, and they certainly want to evoke that, and you just to feel dejected and helpless.
This is a problem. I mean, like, you and I speak about video games constantly, but like, we also speak about sort of, I mean, because I've known you from when we were students, and we've sort of grown old together, and we've gone from people that have had lots and lots of time to people that have had less time and less time and less time, to the point that we're like, you more so than I, but we're adults with responsibilities and things going on, and that our gaming time now is a premium, and that we can't just play everything in the way that we used to play everything. So like, when you want to sit down, you want to play a game, you want it to be an experience that is worthwhile.
Yeah.
I can't decide where I'm at with this game. I can't say it's not worthwhile. I'm not there. I don't think I feel like that. But I can't say I had fun with it necessarily.
No, it's like, there's nothing wrong with games being a challenge, but I feel like this game was a challenge that I never actually overcame. Even though I did. I beat the game.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like I beat the game. I feel like the game constantly just beat me.
It did.
Until I forced my way through it.
It did.
And and obviously at the end it beats you anyway. It just goes, nah, fuck you.
That ending is something I'm going to have to, like, in 3 months, come back to this and start Googling about and seeing what people's thoughts of this. That big alien that you mentioned earlier on, I feel like there's something I'm missing with that as well. Like, that thing is massive and disgusting, and is it like the queen of this apparent infection that is infesting this facility that you're at?
I mean, it certainly is not hostile, obviously.
But is it? Because I feel like every time you did damage to it by giving it this Alex so-called cesarean, enemies would come.
That's true. They would. Maybe, I mean, you could pass it off as it made a hell of a fucking noise every time you sliced its belly open. Because it would turn and look at you after you did it.
Yeah.
Didn't look angry. I mean, it looks like an old man's floppy knob, but that's the point of the game.
One thing I wanted to mention, I think there's a couple other things on my list here, but the other thing I wrote in my notes here is I remember when we were talking about it, and I said that my feeling on the game was that we were missold with this, and I think that I went back and looked at the market material for this game, and it's definitely presented like it's a horror game. Having completed it, I came away thinking this is not a horror game, this is a puzzle game. And then you said,
well, what do you think? What would you?
You didn't necessarily agree with that, so I wanted to listen to your feelings on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to think to find out what you would need to classify it as a horror game, because obviously it's horrible. It's
horrible, yes.
You know, it is deeply unsettling. It is macabre. It is just obsessed with decaying, rotten, horrible flesh. I saw this game described on Wikipedia as biopunk. So it feels like you can put something in front of punk and create a genre at any time you want at this point. But in terms of, I mean, I felt like towards probably the second half of the game, the puzzles tended to feel like they dropped off, or at least that the game world was the puzzle. But however, I found the game world more puzzling in the opening acts, whereas towards the end, it felt like it was very obviously funneling you in a more linear direction, because you'd have a lot of areas that were blocked off. You just turn to the right and, oh, there's a wall full of corpses blocking my way. I guess I'll go left or whatever. So there obviously were, and the weirdest thing is that the puzzles in this game are like kind of standard puzzles.
I found some of them fucking hard.
I I think I absolutely fluked my way through the second version of the
one where you're trying to light the lights up. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my
I think
god.
I fluked my way through that, the hardest one of them. But then there's the one which is just like a maze, like a little maze game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like on the back of a kid's menu at fucking Wimpy. That's like a really standard, basic, children's puzzle.
I've got
transposed into here.
I've got to hold my hands up there, and that I didn't realize for a long time that the dot was static, whereas the maze.
I forgot I could spin
fluid.
It round.
Yeah, so I was like looking through this, is like, so what I initially did is I moved. I was like, oh, I've got to move all the dots to the center, and I did that. And I was like, oh, it's there. It's already at the center. It's already at the center. It took me a minute to realize that I had to move it around again, and that the dot was in the same position every time I turned it. It took me a while. I was far too slow in picking that up.
That was cleverly done. I knew that the 4 pieces that I'd had to put in the middle obviously were going to have to be linked in some way.
Yes.
But I thought I started walking around it, like, right, I've done the first one, now I'm going to go to the second one, and I was like, I can't move. What? I can't move the second. And then I went back and realised you have to actually spin it to do that. That was, I did enjoy that puzzle, but it felt that one was quite easy, and that's one of the last ones in the game.
It was, but once I worked it out.
Whereas the beginning they're kind of like the first puzzle, this big sliding puzzle, which took me absolutely ages, and going back again to do it, to sort of beat the final achievement, to do like the opposite way with the egg guy, still took me like a good 10 minutes, and I'm sitting there thinking, why am I doing this again? But that at least kind of felt it like it was ingrained within the architecture of the world, whereas later on you are just turning some fucking circles and making lights go on, or putting a light. Why is there a maze puzzle inside? It's not inside the big beast, is it? But what? Yeah, that just seems like it really just is almost like, you go into the gates of hell, and to pass through they give you a fucking deck of cards.
I actually think
really out of place.
Think it's interesting. I, now having listened to you describe it a wee bit, I think we're just sort of two sides of the same coin, and that, like, because you're totally right. I guess by definition it is horrible, so it is a horror. It is a horror game. It has to be by definition if it's horrible. And
thematically, anyway, it is thematically a horror
game. Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting.
Mm.
I guess for me, when I'm thinking of a horror game, and again, this is speaking purely for me and purely my own definition. If I'm looking for a horror game, I'm looking for fear to be a significant aspect to the game, or at least something that they're shooting for. And I was never scared in this game. I felt dread, but not fear. I'm not sure I even felt dread. The only time I felt dread was there was one point where I encountered one of those bull things that charge you down, and I didn't have any ammo. That was it. But for me,
because obviously I was fucking up. Sorry, go on.
My chief experience of the game, I felt, was working out what the game wanted me to do. So my sort of chief takeaway was working at the puzzles. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that. But I guess we're just sort of talking around the same thing that we're largely agreeing on.
I mean, I think as we discussed earlier, my inability to understand the weapon swapping mechanic meant that almost the entire time I had no health. I was taking hits off of every. I mean, I found the first gun in the game to be your weapon that you had for far too long, and I found that almost impossible to use.
I didn't use it
without getting hit.
Didn't use it. Did
you run away?
Yeah. So the weird plucked chicken things and the slug things with legs.
Slight aside to that, actually, I hate the enemy design of this. I think said it looked like it's drawn by a child.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I just felt like the way that they've set up every environment in this game is like this incredible artistic achievement.
It's complex.
And then the enemies is just white blobs with legs. Yeah. Like, what the fuck was that?
So bad. Those enemies, any enemy other than the bull, if you saw them coming, if you just stood back, they walked into the wall and fucked off.
Yeah,
so you just walk off. So you didn't have to engage with them. So I
kind of was doing after a time. Yeah, after a while I got into that mindset. But when I was trying to fight them, I felt like I would get 2 hits in with this little hole punch thing, then you have to wait for it to recharge.
And the enemies who take 3 hits to die.
Yeah,
so
and I would try and run.
I'm not using this.
Yeah, I would like circle round the back of an enemy, and they would. I mean, I saw it. I wish I'd taken a video of it. But the one that spits the green acid would reel back, ready to do it, and I would walk around to the behind him, and he would turn 180. Like, he would bend his neck like a fucking owl and spit the acid at me when I was behind him. Almost like like there was no way that was possible. He flicked around like it was a glitch. Like, there's no way for me to avoid this ever. Mm-hmm. And I'm taking hits every single time. And I would always be walking around with 1 bar of health. Like, through so much of the game, I'd have 1 bar of health. So any enemy that I saw, I was basically dreading the fact that it was going to kill me. And then the checkpoints was going to dick me over and I'd lose another 10 minutes of progress over and over again.
Poor.
So I'm dreading losing the progress. I'm not necessarily dreading the enemies because I'm scared of them. I'm dreading them because they're going to ruin my game if I get too close.
Yeah.
But if I understood the combat better, maybe I wouldn't have felt that way.
I'm trying to think it's about the halfway point in the game, I think. So when you're trying to work out in fact, it's probably beyond that. When you're moving the sort of orb-like lifts around the place so that you can eventually go to the second area. The
big willies that join together.
So there's a big platform in the middle.
Oh no, sorry, sorry, I'm thinking of when you get them little tunnels that kind of look like an airplane.
Yes, I know that bit. Yes.
Join them together. That was very phallic again.
Yeah, that was phallic. No, I'm talking about the bit where you've got the up and down lift.
Yeah.
And then getting the ball lift. It was up to that point before I realised that I could heal myself.
That's mad. I don't know how you did this.
Just by avoiding contact. Just avoid. And then it's after that you meet the bulls, because then you get taken to the area with the big massive dude. And I actually thought before we move on to the next bit, the thing that I felt like I see a lot of things like chat on Twitter and the internet and stuff about this talking about how beautiful this game is, and it's certainly striking. My favourite part of the game is actually basically the end. Once you get beyond the area that is obviously infected by some parasite and you get into this temple area that obviously is more akin to what the world used to be, to me that area is beautiful. The rest of the game is just like Gears of War 2005 brown with an interesting
very weird adjective to use, isn't it? To call it beautiful.
Yeah.
And that again, we're going back to the art thing from the beginning, that it's not beautiful, but people are somehow finding beauty in this really twisted, horrible, disgusting imagery.
I would say
what was I going to say? The end bit, it is striking. That end bit reminded me of Returnal.
Yeah, good shout.
Visually.
I loved that end area. I thought that end area was... Well, we'll get to the Krang fight, but I thought the visuals of the end area were fucking fantastic. I got off that lift when you're there. I'm like, oh my god, this place is beautiful. That was the first time I thought this game is beautiful. The rest, I was like, oh, this game is dark and oppressive, and I just want to greet.
Miserable, isn't it?
Yeah. Unless you've got anything else to say, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the plot, if you're okay with that, Alex.
I'll tell you, before you do the plot, I will. You're probably going to get onto this in a minute, but I found a hilarious thing on Reddit where some guy was like, "Guys, this game can be played in Romanian. This is the first video game I've ever seen that you've been able to change the language to Romanian." And the first comment was, "Mate, there's no text in the game or talking."
You can play it in any language you like.
Yeah. What the fuck was that? Where does that language thing even come into it? Doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely no idea.
That was something that guy's dreams absolutely crushed. Oh, my native language! I can't wait, mate. There's no talking or speech or text. Nothing. No words.
Right. Obviously, this is less plot and more sort of quick rundown of the general plot points of the game.
Cool.
So the story takes place between two silent protagonists, as we've discussed. The first awakens and attempts to cross a wasteland, heading towards a tower seen in the distance before meeting an untimely end. The second emerges from an egg-like structure, probably much like the egg you mess about with in the first puzzle. The player escapes a massive egg chamber before entering a transportation hub that has been infested with some sort of parasitic entity that have networked together to prevent the majority of mechanisms from functioning. The player then embarks upon a mission to continue the work of the first character by unclogging these choke points and bringing the plant back to, I guess, life of sorts, back to a working order at least.
I did enjoy how one of those was done by pouring acid on a bunch of corpses and just fucking melting them away.
A lot of which corpses looks like they were having sex as well, which I thought
yeah.
was... During this time, the protagonist is attacked and seemingly infested by this hugger parasite, which we spoke about again, which both allows the player to use several machines and weapons at the same time, but regularly wounds the player and apparently grows tendrils that gradually cover the player's body, which we get to when we get to the last area where you've got to start cutting it off. The player eventually reaches a central elevator that has been enveloped in a massive creature with a vaguely humanoid head, which again was spoken about. Reactivating the elevator kills the creature, but allows the protagonist to access a skyway, then allows the player to reach an apparent temple previously seen in the distance. As I said before, this is actually my favourite set of visuals in the game. I've seen a lot of praise for the game. I'm repeating myself here. Blah, blah, blah. I'll mix that, get through. The parasitic organism certainly seems to be less prevalent here, giving the player a glimpse into what is probably the best described as the world before the infestation, which I really enjoyed. Explore the temple. The parasite almost completely envelopes the player, forcing it to use a machine to remove it. Again, we've discussed this. During this process, it is apparently heavily implied that the parasite is actually the first protagonist. Just before it's removed, the parasite disembowels the player, who staggers to another medical device that connects the player to a hive mind within the temple, controlling an android type thing. The player carries his own body towards a swirling energy field where he is attacked again by the parasite, who merges and completely kills the player and ends the game mere meters from your goal. Horrible ending, isn't it, Alex?
Yeah, bleak. Very, very bleak indeed. Yes, totally. I guess in keeping with the entire rest of the game, there is, as I said, there is no joy, there is no feeling of success, there is no completion of this. It's just the end. It just ends.
Do you know where? Have you seen?
I think I'm definitely on board with you being the parasite is the old version or the other version of your character.
Do you?
Now that I think about it,
know where the character's going, what he's trying to do?
This is where the metaphor of it being born comes from, but I don't know what that is, where that's supposed to be.
Like, where's he going to?
Because why are the two statues pregnant looking? There's a load of stuff to do with being pregnant.
Pregnant imagery in this game. Even that cram boss again.
Yeah. It's a fetus, isn't it? That you basically put in the stomach of a.
Yeah.
What one theory I saw was suggesting that this is the civilization trying to make themselves slightly more robust and mechanized, because these have obviously got they're just like a production line of more of the different types of sort of semi-robotic android type enemy that you fight as the final boss, effectively, of the game. Whereas obviously everybody else is just a normal, weird, squishy human that's getting cut out of eggs and whatever. Whereas these almost look like manufactured versions of, I don't know, trying to be more of a perfect being. But I don't know what the two pregnant statues are all about, because obviously you're controlling both of them, aren't you, to carry yourself out and beat up that little multi-armed doctor guy.
You've literally got to inject them with fetus blood.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I don't understand what all of that was.
What did you think of that? What did you think of that boss fight with the weird android fetus Krang thing?
Well, full disclosure, I guess I was reading a guide by this point because I just wanted to get it done. So the guide did kind of say, keep your distance and allow it to shoot the grenades at you.
It wasn't that hard. It wasn't very difficult.
No. So I knew the strategy going in of don't get up close and let it hit you, because then you'll stagger. Just wait for it to start reloading. But I kept missing my shots. I found the time that it took for crosshair to thin down, to be accurate and not effectively be some kind of wild shotgun blast, for excruciatingly long in that fight. But I did enjoy version 2, where you get a grenade launcher and you just shoot the grenade into its backpack and blow it up. That was fun. That was probably the one bit of time where you felt powerful in the whole game.
It's such a weird. again,
and even then, you've got to cut your own arm off to proceed through the rest
Yeah.
of it and lose health constantly.
it sort of felt like I was missing something, but that whole boss fight just felt like it was there because you're playing a video game.
That was the video gamiest part, wasn't it? For sure.
Yeah. It's like,
Here's a final boss.
You're playing a
Because
video
then after
game.
that, it's almost like they renege on that ideal and be like, oh, sorry. Yeah, you can just experience the end. Because there's not really any puzzles after that, is it? It's just
Not really, no.
take the fetus blood, stick it in the statues, watch what's going on with this weird guy who's further disemboweling you after you've already been disemboweled. Unless, again, this is the metaphor of, is he trying to get some kind of, are you pregnant and is he trying to get something out of you, blah, blah, I don't know. But yeah, the end of the game seems to just go back to being like an art piece. I think I described it to you early on, didn't I? This is a boring art exhibition
Yeah.
rather than a video game. So maybe they heard me and were like, okay, fine, boss fight with grenade launchers. Fuck it, do it. Here's a shotgun.
I guess the sort of next section we've got here is the gameplay. I will do a quick run through this, but to be honest, we've covered this a lot. The basic idea of the gameplay is that the player controls a humanoid character in a post-apocalyptic world that has seemingly been overrun by a parasite. Over the course of the game, the player is required to explore different areas of some kind of facility, complete puzzles, fight or avoid enemies to move to the next area. I've written down here that you can basically break the game down into 3 different camps: exploration, combat, and puzzle solving.
Yeah.
The exploration, I think we're in agreement here. I initially found it quite overwhelming, but once I sort of understood that the areas that actually they look back on each other, it's not as bad as it thought. When I would enter an area, I would just pick an area and go, because I'd be like, I'm going to end up back here regardless. I'm just going. I won't miss anything. I do find myself slightly disappointed that they didn't kill the character more than once, but I understand what they're going for. I would have liked them to break the game up into acts and you be a different character, almost sort of being this small cog in a massive hole towards an end goal. But having completed the game, that's not what they were going for, was it?
No.
Combat wise, the only enemy that really sort of, it wasn't even dread, it was just like, oh no, not you again, was the bull, because they were the hardest enemy and they would run at you. And there was a couple of occasions where, there was one occasion actually, not a couple, when I encountered 2 and I thought I was done for, but I just ran away and it was fine.
If I hadn't made such a hit of the combat, then I probably wouldn't have felt the same way that I did about it, because I just felt that it was quite clunky at times. I mean, I hate that first weapon.
Definitely clunky, yeah.
I think with that first weapon, engaging in the combat in any way was just a death sentence. And I'm surprised to see how avoidable it was. Sometimes it felt to me like it's just unavoidable. Mm-hmm. You know, you're going up a lift and there's one right in front of you coming out of a wall or something. Sometimes you go up a lift and it's behind you as the lift. The entrance to the lift, I guess, is not the same side as the exit, so you'll end up being facing the wrong way, and there'll be a fucking acid spitter behind you. And like I said, they seem to have ridiculous accuracy. Running away didn't seem to work. I was trying to run past them, so because I didn't twig.
Yeah, it's nuts, isn't it?
I didn't twig that you could just wait and they would leave. So at times I'm thinking, well, I can't fight them because I've got 1 health. And it takes 4 hits to kill them, and I've only got 2 before I have to reload, and I can't escape after that. So that became I was constantly just trying to leg it and just getting shot in the back or going around the corner and there'd be another one there, so I'd have to run back and I'd get like sandwiched all the time. So I was getting the dread from that, just being in this state of, I really don't want to die because I don't have to do all of that again. But I don't know how to avoid fighting these fucking things. And then it's only later on when I actually first saw one go into a wall, I thought, do I really not have to do any of this? Can I just stand and save all my ammo? And then realised that, you really can. I mean, the shotgun and the pistol were fine. I don't mind the fact that you had to manually reload the bullets one by one. He's kind of almost like picking it out of the little fleshy spider thing and putting it in his gun. I didn't even mind the fact that the ammo was scarce, which again makes me think back to, this is a survival horror game because I'm having to manage my resources because they're very, very finite. And you have to find ammo in the game where it tells you it wants you to get the ammo from, rather than it just being something that you have a constant supply of. So I feel like, yeah, if I knew the D-pad worked, probably would have different opinions on the combat. But definitely that first gun I had for way too long, and it caused me no end of game overs to the point where I was getting really fed up. And once I got the pistol, like I said, the accuracy, I mean, again, if I'd have been waiting for them to leave, not as bad, but the accuracy was difficult. And if you missed even one or two shots, you're not going to have enough ammo to kill more than one enemy. And then anyone else you see, you're going to have to run. So, yeah, it's a tough game, but it's not impossible. It's not necessarily hard. I just don't feel like it was wanting you to be successful. It never really wanted to help you win these fights unless you just avoid them. That's the only way it seems to want you to win. It's not empowering. It's not giving you the power to have a lot of agency over the combat.
No, you never felt there was no sort of leveling up, and at no point did they start really throwing ammo at you. So it was.
I mean, even healing took a long time. It was very slow.
I've done a bit about development here. I'll quickly run through it and see.
By the way, actually, on the development, I saw something earlier that said the developer, when they first did their, it might have been their second Kickstarter, actually, the developer likened the game to Dark Souls. Hang on, Metroid Prime, Dark Souls, and Journey were their three games they mentioned as their influence.
Did they elaborate on that? I don't get the
Metroid I heard this as second-hand information, so I don't know.
Right, okay, because
Metroid Prime, I guess, is probably to do with the oppressive, barren landscape that you get lost in, I'd imagine.
I guess we'll link back to that at the end of the podcast, I guess.
Maybe. Yes.
Me being my Metroid... What was the Metroid SNES game, or was it NES game?
Super Metroid.
Super Metroid that we podcasted earlier about. I mean, to me, a Metroid game is... Like, you could say a Dead Space game is a Metroid-like, because you're sort of going back and forth in the same areas.
Probably would say that, yeah.
I didn't really return to anything.
No, it's cut off into segments, isn't it? But it's like it's interconnected in a non-linear way. I guess that part is there. Journey, I guess we can kind of see it's like a very opposite of Journey. Yeah. You did a lot of walking.
Yeah. Okay. I'll let them.
But that's what they said it was like. That's how they sold it on Kickstarter. Apparently,
I'm not feeling it, but
no, me neither. No,
it's their choice.
I mean, and again, none of those three things make you think, oh yeah, puzzle game.
Yeah. So yeah, it was, as we've said, it was developed by a company called Ebb Software. This is a Serbian game development studio founded in 2013. The developers claim to have designed the game around the idea of being thrown into a world, as we've said. And as such, very little context is given about the game's setting. They also explain that they want the unsettling environment to be a character in itself, which is true. It's very Geiger, so I guess that's fair. The game itself was announced on the 12th of November 2014 with a trailer showing pre-alpha footage, followed by a Kickstarter campaign in December 2014, which ended, as Alex said, unsuccessfully. Despite this, the game remained in development with a planned 2-part release.
I saw that.
In January 2015, Scorn received private funding from an investor, and full production started in February 2015. The game was
nobody seems to know who that investor is either. That seems to just be some kind of mystery benefactor.
Elon Musk or Donald Trump. In 2015, the game was planned to be released in 2 parts, with only the first part being announced as Dasein. No, sorry, it's a German word and it's pronounced Dasein. It's a German word which means being there in vernacular German and being in the world in someone called Martin Heidegger's philosophy book.
Okay.
In August 2018, the production team announced that they would launch the game as a whole instead of in parts, although no concrete date was announced. In 2017, Ebb Software launched a second Kickstarter, which reached its goal of €150,000 in September of that year. And on the 7th of May 2020, it was announced that the game would be published on PC and have a timed console exclusivity with Xbox Series X and X, running in 4K 60 FPS, and would not be released on previous generation consoles, as the developer team did not want to spend the development time on what would be considered a subpar version of the game. And that's really all I could find in development.
So I have some additional information that
Excellent.
friend of the show, Mr. Ashley Blackburn, sent me. Now this has not actually been fully confirmed by the developer, but it seems to be widely believed to be what's happened, and that this belief is that this is the first console game to use FSR 2.0. Do you know what that is?
No.
So FSR is an AMD technology, which stands for Fidelity Super Resolution.
Is this part about the new AMD graphic cards are meant to be shit hot? Is this part of that?
Well, I guess because maybe, but I guess it's not so much to do with the graphics cards itself, because this is like a hardware agnostic technology.
Okay.
That just allows certain AMD GPUs to be utilized to do what effectively it does is it upscales low resolutions to then save power for other things like frame rate. So apparently the game actually runs at 1440p, but this FSR upscales it or recreates the image and boosts it to 4K, which you can't tell the difference between really from the naked eye, but it also allows it to then run at 60 FPS.
Okay.
Which makes a fucking mockery of Gotham Knights, by the way.
No, yeah, so I've also got a thing to add to that while you're saying that. If you are interested in what Alex is talking about in any way, you should head over to a YouTube channel called AI in Games. It's a Scottish guy that makes...
Oh, he's great.
YouTube videos about AI in video games, shockingly. He does have a bit about the remaking the AI in Resident Evil 2 and 3, which is a video worth looking at, but the thing Alex is talking about, he's got his most recent video is a video about DLSS3 explained, and he talks about how AI sampling and rendering can predict frames in a game, which can upscale frames, and he runs it and shows it on and off versus a 4K resolution on using a Spider-Man game. And obviously this DLSS3 uses significantly less sort of brain power in real estate than not having it on and running it natively, and you cannot tell the difference. It is absolutely fascinating. So head over to AI in Games and have a look at that video, because it's really, really interesting on what Alex is talking about.
Okay, yeah, because apparently this FSR 2.0 is not in PS5. Because apparently AMD have a better relationship with Microsoft, so they were able to utilize this FSR 2.0 for the Series X. Apparently Doom Eternal and Gears 5 use FSR 2.0 on PC,
okay,
but no console game has ever had it used yet. They have been giving out what are they called, GDKs, is it, Game Developer Toolkit things? Mm-hmm. So I think the strong belief is that this Ebb Software and whatever, they were given one of these, as everybody has been who's developing games for Series X and whatnot, and they were the first to actually utilize it to, as I say, have a lower resolution, but allow it to then upscale the resolution to make it 4K and also run 60 FPS, which is why you don't have a performance mode versus quality and all that shit.
That's actually from the playbook that Microsoft have used before. So you know how like people used to talk about how the PS3 was much more powerful than the 360, but if you were to put games side by side, unless it was like a PS3 developed specifically game like Uncharted or like an exclusive one,
Last of Us, yeah,
you wouldn't notice a difference, and it was because the upscale in tech in the Xbox 360 was apparently shit hot. So everything on the Xbox 360 would run natively in 720p.
It would, yeah.
But the upscale in technology to 1080 was so good that you just couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, a lot of games marketed themselves as being in 1080, even though that wasn't true.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's probably beyond. I just don't have an understanding of technology even going into.
Yeah, Ash is really into that kind of stuff, so he was very keen to tell me all of this. And
thank you, Ash. That's really.
What did he said afterwards? The game is still insufferably shit, but it is genuinely next gen in that regard. He's not a fan.
I get it. If some because this is the thing is like I think we touched on it earlier on. Like when I was further on than you, and I obviously wasn't having the same visceral reaction to you. I was like, is this going to be the game that we've had the biggest difference in opinion on? And obviously, like your opinion's closed on it, But if someone was to say, I mean, closed in on mine, not you're not closed.
Yeah.
If someone was to say I don't like this game, I could get it. I totally get it.
I definitely don't like the beginning and how it. They were saying earlier about how it drops you in the world. I think sometimes there's a merit to that, but I feel like in this case there was so little, like, understanding of anything going on and being lost at the same time. A lot of the time I was thinking, I don't know where I'm going or why, and that's the problem. What am I doing any of this? But what is going on and why is it happening?
It's a risky take, right?
Why is it? It's gutsy. It's gutsy to stick to that vision. I mean, and be this is how we want to overwhelm the player, because you and I both felt that way, and we both did persevere through it. And I think we're probably both glad that we did for the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a friend who plays a lot of Souls games, and he found, I mean, he's got over that hump now, and he really likes it. But initially, he was turned off by Elden Ring because he felt that he was plopped in this world, and he was like, I have no idea where I'm meant to go. I don't know what I'm doing. So I get it. I like, and my sort of closing feelings on this game. Really interested to hear yours. I don't think I can bring myself to say I really enjoyed this game.
No, I didn't either.
I can say that I appreciated it. I think
I do now,
and I sort of value its contribution. But did I have fun and a great time playing it? Nah, not really. But just kind of brings me back to when we were talking about the Metacritic score. I'm somewhere like in between the PC and Xbox, somewhere in the 6.5 range, I think, for me.
Yeah.
Didn't hate it, didn't love it. I see what it's shooting for. I can appreciate and admire to an extent what it's shooting for. I'm not sure it always hits the target.
Yeah, because I want to come back to something you said.
Yeah, go for it.
In a second. But I feel like as well, this notion of dropping you in the world and being overly mysterious and vague, I don't know. Maybe it's just a way of how certain people's minds work. I feel like my mind probably works more in a way of like a desire for understanding from, I don't know, maybe it's not quite being spoon-fed stuff, but I've got like a really good short-term memory. I can piece things together quite quickly if they're explained to me. Whereas this game doesn't do any of that, and you almost have to be mentally creative in figuring out what's actually going on, and it's so open-ended that you won't get an answer. And maybe that's, it's kind of seems a bit reductionist to say that I need closure on everything, but people do generally, as human beings, like closure for things. And without any of that, and when the closure looks like it's right there and then it's dragged away from you at the end, it can kind of leave you coming out of it feeling almost a little bit sour of like, what the hell was the point of any of that? I think it feels like you tried to gross me out and confuse me, and then you fucked me over at the end. I don't actually feel that way, but on the surface level, it kind of can look like that. I
remember when we were, I mean, it wasn't I was going to say when we were first getting into video games, that's not true. It's when I was first sort of starting to think about video games critically. I played LA Noire, and you play that whole game, and at the end of the game, you just die, and nothing changes. Yeah. The corruption continues in the police. The people that are at fault for your death get to carry on in position, and you actually achieve nothing at the end of that game. And I remember coming away from that game being quite angry, because I was like, well, what was the point? What was the point in playing this? Why have I done this? I don't know why I didn't get that feeling, because it's basically done the same thing again. Maybe I've just changed a little bit, or maybe I don't know what, but like, yeah, I get that feeling and I totally appreciate it, because I've had that feeling before. I just think like I do, but then is that what it's going for? Because like, without getting too morbid, I mean, like, what is the point in all of this? Like, what are we doing? It's just to sort of try and have fun along the way. Unfortunately, I think that guy had no fun.
No, and I think somebody said that to me as well. I think another video that I saw talking about the story of this basically said one of the underlying themes seems to be almost the pointlessness of existence, and the fact that a lot of these things are just existing as almost literal cogs in the machine. Mm-hmm. Sometimes clogging up the machine's cogs with themselves, but all of these people just serves as like an organism for this overarching like malevolent function that's basically there just to feed off of them and create structures using their flesh, which again could be some kind of social commentary on corporations. Who knows? And how we're all just tools for them and their quest for greed. Who knows? I said I wanted to come back to something you said before, and I can't remember what it fucking was. That's really annoying. I was just going to ask you to elaborate on it, but what the fuck was it going to be?
You think about that. I'm going to pee quickly.
All right.
Hello, boys. No, sorry, I'm here already.
Ah, yes. Got it. I got it, baby. I got it.
Did you remember?
I did.
Oh, he did.
I did. So, right. I believe it was right near the beginning of the show. You said you felt like you'd been missold.
Yeah.
So, I know that you said that mainly. What I've gleaned from that is you're expecting horror. You didn't think it was horror. It was more of a puzzle game. Is that the extent of how you felt missold? Because if I actually went through all the copies of Edge magazine that I've been sold under this scam offer I've accidentally got out of them, where I'm still getting every issue for £1 and they don't seem to be changing it. I went all the way back for the whole year and I saw one basically paragraph on this video game, and it said almost nothing of substance. Like they just sort of said it's inspired by H.R. Geiger. It's a mystery game, horror sort of thing. There was barely anything in there, and I thought, like, no one has talked about this game at all. It's just been like, look at this fucked up shit. That's going to be a game. And then everyone's just been intrigued, but because they didn't know what it was. So, yeah.
Yeah,
elaborate.
I guess you're right. And if I'm elaborating, like, honestly, I'm not sure how much of it is actually based on my expectation versus what I was actually told. Like, I mean, like, a lot of this was based on it's a game that is being released during the horror month. We're doing a Spooktoberfest. We overtly discussed playing horror games for these podcasts, or scary games, or Halloween games. We selected this game, and then I played through it, and I was like, this isn't a horror game to me. I think actually having spoke to you about that and elaborated on it a little bit, I still don't feel like it's a horror game, but I can understand the body horror aspect of it. But by a literal definition, it probably is a horror game because it's horrific to look at. It just doesn't tick what I'm looking for in a horror game and what I would expect from horror. What I did in the run up to this game, because I said this to you 2 or 3 times, the thing that was when we were sort of discussing the next games to select for our podcasts, and you had suggested this, and I was like, yeah, happy to give it a go. But like I say, like a couple of times I said to you, the problem I'm having with this game is I just can't get a read on it. I don't know what this is. Normally I can look at a trailer for a game and like pick up like that what it is, what type of game I'm going to be expecting. I looked at the trailers and I started Googling about, and I did see a lot of coverage about this being a horror game, and then I was playing it. I was like, "There's nothing horror about this." But it is, I guess. Like, is Saw a horror game? Saw is a horror game, a horror movie. Saw is a horror movie, but there is, to me, like, again, this is where we're sort of peeling apart the definitions of horror. Like, the body horror is a part of horror. Yeah. Whether I think it is or not, it is.
Yeah, exactly.
But to me, the horror part of Saw is the sort of unknown hijacker and the unknown kidnapper. If we're talking about the first movie, it's not the guy having to cut his leg off to escape, which obviously is a horror and it's part of the horror genre. Same with Hostel. It's not the actual, like, to me, when I'm looking at a horror movie, it's not the actual, like, injury of a person. It's the sort of threat from the person chasing you, or the threat of the unknown, or the threat of the person that's kidnapped you. That's what I'm looking for a horror. Watching someone get stabbed, or watching someone to get the leg chopped off, or because like what's that movie? Is it 72 Hours? You know, the guy that goes hiking and ends up getting his arm crushed.
Yeah, 100 something hours.
Something like that.
Yeah,
that's not horror to me.
I don't think that was that marketed as such?
No. Not
they certainly played on that one scene for the entire marketing of it.
They don't really show it, do they? But that
I've not seen it.
Would be the same body horror to me is the guy cutting his ankle off in Saw. So to me, I'm looking for an overarching theme. I'm not looking for the little, like, there's certainly horror elements to it, but what I took away from this, my predominant feeling from this was, this is a puzzle that needs to be worked out. And I need to work out how to progress, and I need to work out how to get through each section of the game.
Yeah. So I guess you are looking to be terrified rather than horrified.
Yeah, to me, like, Alien was a horror game. Dead Space is a horror game. Resident Evil are horror games. Maybe not Resident Evil 4 or 5 or 6. So I
don't think I've ever found a Resident Evil game scary. Well, actually, no. The remakes of 2 and 3, maybe just 2, is pretty scary. There's definitely a threat there.
It's horror themes, yeah. Like the dude in Resident Evil. Well, the remakes in 2 and 3, I find Mr. X scary in 2 until about the midway point, until you work out you can sort of just loop around him, and then he stops being scary. But he was scary, and then he stopped being scary. I'm early on in Resident Evil 3 at the moment. I've just finished the first section. I found the Mr. X, what is he called?
Nemesis.
Yeah, I found him scary, but then I was watching some.
Oh, don't! You'll spoil that.
That AI design guy.
So if you see that he's basically scripted the entire time, you won't find him scary anymore.
Apparently, I've finished the bit that he's actually scary in. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But then, if you took out the puzzles from Scorn and you just had the exploration and the combat, would you then think it was more of a horror game?
Well, this is it to me. Like,
does the puzzling simply just trivialize that?
The two things to me, when we're sort of genreizing a game, is that fair? It's this sort of overarching theme. Like, I mean, like, how many video games exist that have got RPG elements? And of those games that have got RPG elements, how many of them are actual RPGs? Very few. Like, there's RPG elements.
RPG's dumb anyway, right? Because you play a role in every video game.
It's so dumb.
You're always playing a character.
But I mean, that sort of compounds my point to an extent. Like, our RPG is a feeling. Does that make sense? Like, it's a vibe that the game gives off, and to me, the overarching vibe is not horror. And like you were saying, if you took away the puzzles, there's the overt puzzles, but like we were talking about the enemies in the game, and actually, other than the bull enemies, when I was forced to, I avoided combat actively. And so to me, when I entered a section, I wasn't, I've got to kill these things like a run and gun shooter. I was like, right, how do I get round this section without engaging anything? And I would sit and work out how to maneuver the area. And then the same thing.
Perhaps you just kind of focused your mind into a different mindset that you're normally in a horror setting and in a horror game, to the point where you didn't feel that coming from the game. But it's definitely thematically horror from minute 1 to end, because it's
right.
But it's just not. It just didn't scare you, I guess, and it didn't. There aren't really any scary moments in it. I completely agree with that. It is just horror. Like I say, it's horrifying rather than terrifying. It is just relentlessly, sort of abhorrent to look at. It's just horrible, rather than scary. But it's not a survival. It's not really a survival. Well, like I said, I think there are survival horror elements where you're talking about resources management versus combat and scary things.
This is also something I never engaged with because I was actively avoiding combat. I think there was one point in the entire game that I thought, ammo's an issue here. Like the rest I always had if I needed it. I just never it was never an issue with me, and it's actually now sort of making me think about Alien Isolation, and I wonder if I can't say for sure, but part of me wonders now when we're talking about this is part of the sort of visceral dislike I ended up having for Alien was because, like, in this game I could mechanize it, and when you can mechanize it, it removes the horror from it. So, and what I mean by that is, like, I can sit and work out, right, I can beat these enemies by doing this. In Alien, you can't do that. You've got to just play it on the fly, and you've got to try and that truly terrified me because you just never knew what it was going to do, and I couldn't do an area, die, and then think, right, I've died because of this. The alien's going to act in this way again when I walk into this room, because he didn't. It didn't. You didn't know what it was going to do, and maybe that's maybe. I mean, I would need to really sit and think about it, but maybe my visceral reaction of Alien was so hard because it was the first game that truly scared me, and I just didn't know how to handle the alien. I just couldn't get right. Maybe that's a really valid point that you've almost, as you say, like sort of compartmentalized it in your brain to be, here's the puzzle bits and now here's a combat bit, but I know how to deal with the combat bit because I avoid it. And you could see the workings of the AI, which admittedly, now that I've seen it in action as well, very basic. Yeah, it just walks towards you and then buggers off if it can't see you. Yeah, and not like the alien, which has all this. It's like in like when we were playing Apex, and there's those, what do you call them? Those enemies,
prowlers.
The prowlers. They've got hard aggro lines, and if you cross that aggro line, they'll come for you. If you cross back over it, they're not going to come for you. Like as soon as you go through that door in the Jurassic Park area in Apex, they're not following you through. You're totally safe. Same with this. There was lines that you would cross and they would just stop. Even the bull enemies, there was a line you would get to and they would stop following you.
I think there's one bit where like you use the little stud gun thing and then it opens a gate and a bull comes out from like the other side. Yeah. There's like a pillar in the middle. I just circled round. Yeah. Like basically parallel to the bull and walked out the door. That was the end of that. So that I can completely understand why you are less agreeable with the horror labeling because of the fact that you were able to just, as you say, mechanize it and see almost how the sausage is made and then keep making your own sausages.
Yeah. And like I say, I've softened on that to the extent since we've spoken about it, and that like if we're talking about literal definitions, I can't say it's not. It's a horror game. You're right. It's horrific. It's horrible to look at. If I'm talking about vibes, a bit more ethereal, I didn't get a horror vibe from it. I got a puzzle vibe from the game.
And then there's puzzles in Resi and Silent Hill and stuff too. It's kind of a staple of the genre, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess it's just what you take from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's the same. It's like, you're right. There's puzzles in Resi, but like, and there was puzzles in Resi 5, but I wouldn't call Resi 5 a puzzle game. I'd call that an action game.
That was not a horror game. We can all agree on that.
Yeah. That's like, I don't know. It's weird. Like Zelda's an interesting one because I see Zelda's being described as an RPG all the time. I don't think it's an RPG at all. To me, it's a...
People kind of just call it an action RPG and in a way to just kind of shoehorn that part of it in there, don't they?
It's an adventure game to me.
Nintendo will always market it as an action adventure game for sure.
An action game to me is like a Devil May Cry. Or
yeah.
I don't know. Definitions are weird, man. Especially with video games.
Yeah.
They're interesting where we draw our lines.
Yeah. And how wedded and like in sort of personally involved in what did you say? Categorizing? No, what did you say?
Don't know.
Not genres. You said something. Not genres. I can't remember what you said now. But people can get so wedded to a genre or like
Yeah.
a descriptor of a game that, yeah, they can take offense to it being called one thing or another.
Oh, if there's one thing the video game industry is good at, it's about getting his knickers in a twist about things that don't matter.
Yeah.
Do you want to let the audience have a peek behind the curtain? How many games ahead are you wanting to do? Are we just doing the next game? Or we want to give them a rough idea about the end of the year? Because we know what we're doing at the moment, unless something changes.
We actually have a plan to take us through to episode 50 and the end of 2022. I don't know. Should we say all of them? I mean, does it even matter?
We can say it and then we can change it. I mean, that's what we've done the whole time. We've said we're doing games next and then just not did it. Done it.
Yeah, well, I've already laid out a non-negotiable game for the rest of the year. So it had to be done before I die, so I'm getting it in now just in case. So what have we got next?
Next is Metroid Prime, right?
It is, which I have began playing. And
have you uploaded it so that I can have access?
Oh, I sent you the link to download it.
Oh, did you? Okay.
That'd be a lot quicker than waiting for me to upload it for 2 hours.
Is it a GameCube game? Or
yes.
A GameCube game. Okay. I've made a good purchase with my GameCube controller then.
You have indeed. Well, you're going to be using that a couple of times. So we are celebrating quite a few anniversaries towards the end of this month.
We are.
End of this year. So as David said, the next game is Metroid Prime, which will be celebrating its 20-year anniversary on the 15th of November. So it obviously came out in Metroid 2002.
Prime, right, so before we go into this, before we go into the rest of the games, I have not played Metroid Prime at all, and my sort of experience of the Metroid game is Super Metroid. Super Metroid's a side-scroller. Metroid Prime's a first-person game. Does it do the sort of, this is your facility and you're going back and forth through sort of Dead Space style?
I am very much hoping that you will be able to get past the way this game handles. Because as I said to you yesterday, when I started playing it, it's a first-person game that doesn't have a right analog stick to use. You walk forwards, left and right, back and forward like you do with Duke Nukem or Doom. I am hoping that you will be able to get past that and see the game for the incredible transition from Super Metroid style into a first-person 3D game, because it is exactly the same type of game as Super Metroid. Weird. It's just from a different perspective. The way that they present it is done so well and so with so much reverence to what it's supposed to be. I hope that you will get the same from it that I do, where you think this is amazing that they managed to transpose this into a first-person shooter, because it really still is a Metroid game.
What's the Metroid game that's on Wii?
The one that everybody hates.
There was a first-person Metroid game I played on Wii for like 10 minutes, and I used the Wiimote as the right stick.
That's probably Metroid Prime 3.
Okay, so I played 10 minutes of that. Maybe
there's Other M, which everybody hates, which is kind of like a almost like an isometric, or at least a fixed camera angle sort of.
That wasn't the one I played.
Half 2D one.
I remember that review on IGN because they give it like a 7.
Yeah, it's basically because of the dialogue and the character acting for Samus. She actually started talking for once, and it was awful.
Okay, so we've got Metroid Prime next, which I will get going with.
I'm really enjoying it again from when I started playing it. I just think
good.
Yeah, it's a really well put together video game. Then next, but after that, is Diddy Kong Racing, which is the non-negotiable game, which everybody's going to finally get to hear me probably shut up about.
It's a kart racing with the boss fights, which I think is great.
We're going to do some damn fun little mini rankings in that, like top 5 songs, because the music in that game is amazing. Rank the bosses, all that kind of shit. We'll have a right old laugh. Yeah. That is 25 years old this year.
Wow.
Also in November. We are aiming to cover God of War Ragnarok, because that feels like probably the most must-have game for the rest of 2022.
Another game in addition to Scorn that has no loading screens throughout the game and no cutscenes.
I completely forgot about the fact that it has no loading screens in Scorn. Yes, that's right.
Just remember that right now. So I was like, shoehorn in.
Yeah, man. Stick it right in there. And then the final game of the year is most likely going to be Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, which also turns 20 years old.
That's the one I can't wait for. That's why I was saying to you before we started podcasting, I have put a bid in for a Wii U so that I can hopefully play that properly.
Well, like I said, I found the emulating stuff for you, so you will be able to do it.
We'll definitely be able to do it. That's my fallback, but don't really have the money, but I do want a Wii U, and I have wanted a Wii U for about 6 months now. So
yeah, you have. That is our plan for the year. 4 games to see us out over the next 2 months.
That'll see out 2022.
We can handle that. I'm sure we can handle that.
Yeah, we've done well. We've actually smashed through this season of horror.
We've done it. Yeah. How many games? Let's see how many games we've actually covered this year. Because obviously, the first thing we'll be doing in 2023 is our game of the year, which is, as people may remember, our game. What we cover.
How long have we been doing this?
2 years now.
Well, I was like 50.
Maybe
Must
not
be more,
entirely 2 years.
Because I think because like 50 games, that's like one every fortnight, roughly. We've stuck to.
Yeah, but I guess there's been times where we have done it every week.
Yeah, we've gone through spates of activity, haven't we?
Yeah, because we did Firewatch, Inscription, and Binary Domain in 3 weeks earlier in February 14th, 21st, and 28th. We did a weekly show for a little bit.
Jesus fucking Christ.
We did 1 in January, and we did our top game of the year. We did 3 in February, 2 in March, 1 in April, 1 in May, a double episode in May, a double episode in June, and then 1 in July, 2 in August for Summer of Resi. September we did Dino Crisis, and then had a bit of a break, and then we're back now. So
I'm interested to play to do our game of the years because we've played some cool games this year. Summer of Resi was so fun. Dino Crisis, man, that was a cool fucking game.
Yeah, we'll have done 20 games by the end of the year. By the time
20?
we cover. We did a couple of those double features, didn't we? So we've done like Mario Land, Wolfenstein, Medal of Honor, Frontline. I forgot about all of that. And then we've got, as you said, we've got some fucking cool games. Binary Domain, Inscription.
Inscription.
Symphony of the Night.
Oh my God, Symphony of the Night.
Prey, remember that?
Prey.
Back in July.
Oh my God. And that is no joke. That's like a proper game. That's not like a 10-hour bash through. That was a beast, that one.
Well, we're not doing that either. Other than Diddy Kong Racing, which takes time to get, if you want to beat the entire thing, we're not fucking about with short games for the rest of the year. Metroid Prime, Wind Waker, and God of War.
Wind Waker. Solid. I'm so looking forward to Wind Waker. I don't know why. I'm just primed for that type of game right now. I've long since held a belief, like a reimagined belief, that I think it's the best Zelda game now, because I think I kind of not had enough, but I moved on from Ocarina of Time in my mind as being my favourite Zelda game, and have always gravitated towards it being Wind Waker instead. So that's going to be put to the test again this year, I think, towards the end of the year. Good.
And hopefully Tears of the Kingdom turns everything on its head and becomes the best, but we'll find out next year.
Hopefully. They don't often mess Zelda up. It's not often.
It was... I saw something recently that was quite funny, that people pointed out the fact that the trailer for Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom came out about a week after the Queen died. There's a lot of people been talking as well, actually, about Advance Wars 1 and 2, whatever it's called.
Oh, that must be coming
Reboot
soon.
Camp. Well, the thing is that they stopped it, or they postponed the release of it because Russia just invaded Ukraine.
They did that with GoldenEye as well, but they've sort of got over that.
Yeah, and a lot of people have sort of been saying, when the fucking Nintendo going to get over this? Well, when are we all going to get over it? So we're going to wait till the war ends before they release the video game? I mean, Call of Duty's just come out, or about to come out. That doesn't seem to be bothered. Can we have Advance Wars anyway?
I mean,
please.
I don't know.
I think one of the parts of Advance Wars is like there's a country that invades another one. I mean, that's kind of what war is, but they didn't want to do that right when that had just happened in real life. Yeah. But that was a while ago now.
Yeah.
I don't want to be insensitive to the war, because obviously it's horrific and it needs to stop, and we were all horrified by it.
Yes.
But the question does remain of, when are Nintendo going to feel comfortable releasing this game, and are they ever going to release it? Is it just going to get binned off because the war may never stop? what happens. I'm desperate to play that game as well, by the way.
I mean,
I'd rather the war ended than the game come out, though. That's for sure.
yeah, absolutely. I think when you start, I don't know. There's a bit of me that says that when you start going down the road of, I can draw a tenuous connection to this.
Yeah.
I shouldn't release the game. Then it's quite easy to get yourself into a situation where you think, I shouldn't release any game ever.
Pretty much. If you have a game come out with a murder in it, I guarantee someone's going to get murdered within 2 minutes of it being released somewhere in the world.
We've just played a game that has, depending on what mindset you were in, you could draw significant rape analogies from. So, yeah, do you know what I mean?
Sure.
It becomes a difficult.
Or the whole stillborn whatever issues with pregnancy stuff going on. Maybe that came from an experience of one of the team or the lead dev. I don't know. Mm-hmm. You feel like if there's like metaphorical elements to this game or underlying symbolism, that it has to represent something that's happened to someone to want them to talk about that.
That is wonderful about video games is that we can contextualize things in a way that people can understand. So like the thing I always use as an example is that Star Trek is a fantastic analogy in a lot of cases for racism. And what that does is you can set up a conflict between a human man or woman person and an alien. And you can make race arguments that are overt, but use a sci-fi context. I mean, science fiction is something that continuously uses racism or like tries to tell lessons about racism through its storytelling. And that's one thing that video games you can use for video games is that they are vehicles to be able to tell a story and highlight an injustice in the world in a way that people can easily absorb, and because they enjoy it, they'll see it through to the end and understand the story that you're hopefully trying to tell. I guess is the argument you would make there. Life sucks, man. People do horrible things to each other. If there's one thing that you can guarantee is that humans will be horrible to humans.
Yeah.
Which feels appropriate to bring us to the end of episode 46 of the Resurrected a Winner As You podcast.
Yeah, of course. We would obviously encourage you all to be nice to each other, and as we are.
And if you can't be nice, make a video game about it.
Yeah, or do a podcast. I mean, you and I think this is probably not, hugely and not really obviously, but this is probably the most we've disagreed on a game throughout this year.
Yeah. And we somehow managed to get through without falling out. So it's possible, video game nerds.
Yeah.
This is something, it's like people don't agree on everything, and you've got to be able to be adults and allow people their space to talk and then move on from it.
Yeah, understand where they're coming from and off you go.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think was, I don't know, maybe that's a metaphor for this game. We've spent this whole podcast trying to understand what this is trying to do. We've maybe scratched the surface of it, and like I say, genuinely, probably we'll come back to this game in a few months once people have sort of digested it, that are more in tune with the art world than I, to see what they thought about it. Because there's something going on with this game that I have not picked up on. And that's it, isn't it, Alex?
It is.
I guess that's it. We have brought ourselves to the end of episode 46. Please start playing Metroid Prime so that you can come back for episode 47 and be full of knowledge. And if you like, you can also follow us on Twitter, which is @winnerisU. You can follow Alex, which is, you're Lalix Baldridge. Are you still that?
No, I'm
Super Thrillix.
Yeah.
Super Thrillix. You can follow me on Twitter @DaveSmiley1. We also have an Instagram page, which is @TheWinnersUPod. And if you've been watching this on YouTube, you can also download our podcast on any YouTube platform of choice. And if you've been listening to us on YouTube, you can see our ugly mugs over on YouTube. I think that's it. Do we have also? No, this is not it, Alex. We've got an email address that we keep forgetting to push. So
yeah, I'm actually just trying to get into the email address now and actually try and see.
To send, I do check it pre-podcast. So if you want to send us an email, there's @winnersupod@gmail.com. The only thing we've got sitting there in the inbox just now is there was a critical security alert. Someone attempted to log in, which was it maybe you, Alex?
Might be me just now, yeah.
Yeah, no, that bombshell, that brings us to the end of the episode. I've been David, he has been Alex, we have been Urban Issue, and I'm out.
Bye. Keep gaming. Forgot what I was supposed to say there.
Enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too. That was a good